The Forgotten Land. Why nobody visits Moldova. The train from Bucharest crossed the Prut River at dusk, its wheels clattering over the tracks like an afterthought. Through the window, the landscape unfolded, rolling hills dotted with crumbling farmhouses, vineyards stretching toward the horizon, and the occasional Soviet-era factory standing silent against the purple sky. This was Moldova, Europe's best-kept secret, not because it was exclusive, but because nobody came. A capital without a crowd, Chișinău greeted visitors with wide, empty boulevards and buildings that seemed frozen in time. The city center, where one might expect bustling cafes and souvenir shops, felt more like an abandoned film set. The few pedestrians moved with purpose, their faces weathered by years of economic storms. The grand architecture of the Soviet era, once imposing and proud, now stood as hollow monuments to a forgotten dream. At the heart of the city, the Hotel National loomed like a ghost. Its grand facade was cracked, its windows boarded up. A faded sign still swung in the wind, but the doors had been locked for years. Locals passed by without a glance, they had long grown used to the decay. A country robbed blind. Moldova's greatest curse was not its poverty, but its thieves. In the early 2000s, $1 billion, nearly an eighth of the country's entire economy, vanished from Moldovan banks in a single, audacious scheme. The money had been siphoned away by oligarchs and politicians, funneled into offshore accounts and luxury villas on the French Riviera. The people who remained were left with empty pensions, crumbling hospitals, and roads that seemed to dissolve into potholes overnight. In the markets, elderly women sold handmade socks and jars of honey, their hands rough from decades of labor. A sign in a shop window read, "We buy hair," a stark reminder of how desperate times had become. The Soviet shadow for older Moldovans, the past was a bittersweet memory. Under the USSR, life had been hard but predictable. Factories hummed, pensions were paid, and Chișinău had been a destination for Soviet tourists seeking sun and wine. Now, the factories were silent, the jobs gone, and the tourists a relic of history. An old man named Ivan sat on a bench in the park, feeding pigeons with crumbs from his pocket. "Back then, we had nothing, but we had enough," he said. "Now, we have nothing at all." The wall of Thieves near the government buildings, a wall was plastered with campaign posters, smiling politicians promising change. Locals called it the Wall of Thieves. Every face up there had been accused of corruption, embezzlement, or outright theft. One poster had been defaced with a single word, "liar." Nobody bothered to take it down. The wine nobody drinks. Moldova's greatest treasure was its wine. The country's vineyards had been famous across the Soviet Union, their rich reds and crisp whites served in Moscow's finest restaurants. Even today, the wine was exceptional, but the world had forgotten it existed. In the underground cellars of Craiova, miles of tunnels stretched into the darkness, lined with barrels and dusty bottles. Once, these cellars had hosted world leaders. Now, they echoed with the footsteps of a handful of curious tourists. The guide, a woman with tired eyes, recited her script with practiced boredom. A land without a story. The real problem was not just corruption or poverty, it was invisibility. Moldova had no Eiffel Tower, no Colosseum, no dramatic history that drew crowds. It was a small country wedged between Romania and Ukraine, both of which had stronger identities, better infrastructure, and more compelling reasons to visit. Most travelers couldn't find Moldova on a map. A hostel owner in Chișinău shrugged when asked about tourism. "Sometimes, a backpacker gets lost and ends up here," he said. "They stay one night, then leave." The people who stayed, not everyone had given up. In a quiet corner of the city, a young woman named Maria ran a small bookstore. She had studied abroad but returned, determined to build something in her homeland. "If we all leave, who will stay to fix things?" she said, arranging a stack of well-worn novels. In the villages, life moved at a different pace. Farmers tilled the soil as they had for generations. Grandmothers baked bread in outdoor ovens, the smell of dough and smoke drifting through the streets. There was a stubborn resilience here, a refusal to disappear completely. The hard truth: Moldova was not a destination. It was a place people left. The young fled to Italy, Spain, anywhere with jobs. The old stayed behind, surviving on memories and meager pensions. The country's leaders, when they weren't stealing, seemed content to let it fade into obscurity. Yet, for all its struggles, Moldova had a quiet beauty, its rolling hills, its warm people, its unbroken spirit. It was a country waiting for its luck to change, for its people to return, for the world to finally take notice. But for now, the trains kept passing through. And Moldova kept waiting.